For nearly a decade, the American public has been relentlessly lectured by the Democratic Party and its media stenographers about the sanctity of our institutions. We were told that Donald Trump was a unique threat, a one-man wrecking ball aimed at the foundations of the republic. They shrieked about Russian collusion, foreign interference, and a presidency supposedly stolen in the night. It was a narrative of unprecedented corruption, a story they sold with religious fervor and absolute moral certainty. Now, as the curtain is finally pulled back, we see the truth. The entire spectacle was nothing more than a grand, cynical act of projection. Every sin they accused Trump of, they themselves had committed with far greater audacity and malice. The bombshell allegations dropped by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, a woman who knows the Democratic machine from the inside, are not just another political squabble. They are the final chapter in a story of breathtaking deception. Gabbard's criminal referral alleges a treasonous conspiracy, a years-long coup orchestrated from the very top of the Obama administration. The claim is simple and devastating. They manufactured intelligence to create the Russia hoax. They knowingly concocted a national crisis to undermine a democratically elected president before he even took office. This wasn't a mistake or a misjudgment. It was a deliberate, seditious plot to subvert the will of the American people. Think about the sheer arrogance required to attempt such a feat. While the media dutifully regurgitated tales of Trump's supposed treachery, the real conspirators were sitting in the Oval Office, the CIA, and the FBI. Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, the very people who positioned themselves as the paragons of democratic virtue, were allegedly the masterminds. They weaponized the nation's intelligence apparatus against a political opponent, turning the tools meant to protect us from foreign enemies into instruments for their own political preservation. The Russia investigation, the Mueller probe, the impeachments, all of it, according to Gabbard's evidence, was built on a foundation of lies. This is the ultimate political irony, a twist so perfect, it almost feels scripted. The party that spent years screaming about a stolen election appears to have been the one actively trying to steal one. They didn't just lie to the public, they lied to Congress and to the courts, all while wrapping themselves in the flag and crying crocodile tears for democracy. Republicans are calling it worse than Watergate, and for once the political rhetoric might actually understate the reality. Watergate was a bungled burglary and a cover-up. This was an alleged attempt to decapitate a presidency using the full power of the state, a plot that makes Nixon's sins look like child's play. The depths of this alleged conspiracy are still being plumbed, but the details that have emerged are damning. Central to this scheme is the accusation that Obama administration officials, including James Comey and John Brennan, knew the Russian threat was a sham. They understood that Russia had no capability to alter actual vote counts, yet they pushed a narrative of systemic interference to create panic and delegitimize Trump's victory. This wasn't just spin, it was the calculated creation of a pretext for a political witch hunt. The entire country was dragged through years of chaos and division based on a lie they knowingly constructed for their own cynical ends. Then there is the issue of Joe Biden, the man who was supposedly just along for the ride as a harmless vice president. His involvement in these machinations is now under intense scrutiny. But beyond that, we are faced with the uncomfortable reality of his leadership or lack thereof. There are persistent questions about his cognitive state, his public appearances, and his infamous reliance on pre-written scripts. The ultimate symbol of this hollowed-out presidency is the autopen. The idea that a machine may be signing official documents for the supposed leader of the free world is not just a curiosity, it's a terrifying metaphor for the entire Democratic establishment, an empty suit animated by unseen operators going through the motions of governance. While the executive branch was allegedly consumed with its coup, the legislative branch had its own brand of corruption on full display. Look no further than Nancy Pelosi, the self-appointed guardian of political morality. For years, she has amassed a fortune through stock trades that seem to possess an uncanny, almost clairvoyant sense of timing. While lecturing the rest of us about fairness and economic justice, her investment portfolio has outperformed even the most legendary Wall Street wizards. It's a miracle of financial acumen that just so happens to coincide with her access to sensitive, market-moving information. The hypocrisy is so blatant it's almost insulting. The picture that forms is one of an entire political class rotten to its core. From the Oval Office down to the Speaker's rostrum, the Democratic Party's leadership appears to operate by a single, simple rule. There are no rules for them. They can allegedly plot against a president, install a figurehead in his place, and enrich themselves with insider knowledge, all while wagging their fingers at anyone who dares to question their authority. They have become the very swamp they once pretended to oppose, a self-serving cabal for whom power is not a public trust, but a personal entitlement to be protected at any and all costs. The greatest tragedy of this saga is not just the political corruption, but the staggering waste it represents. Billions of taxpayer dollars, countless hours of media coverage, and the entire focus of our government were squandered on these manufactured scandals. While the Democrats were busy staging their political theater, promoting fake news, funding partisan investigations, and orchestrating what amounted to a primetime television drama, real problems were left to fester and grow. The American people were told to obsess over Russian bots, while their own country was quietly falling apart at the seams, neglected by the very people elected to serve them. Consider the state of California, the progressive utopia that Democrats hold up as a model for the nation. For years, the state has been lurching from one man-made disaster to another, none more emblematic than its chronic water crisis. This isn't an act of God, it's a failure of governance. While Democratic leaders grandstanded about global climate deals and imaginary threats, they failed to build the necessary reservoirs, desalination plants, and infrastructure to provide the most basic necessity of life for their citizens. They prioritized radical environmental policies and political posturing over practical solutions, leaving millions of people to face the consequences of their ideological vanity. This pattern of neglect is repeated across the country. Our cities are crumbling, crime is rampant, and our southern border remains a sieve. But instead of addressing these tangible crises, the Democratic Party has invested its energy and our money in abstract performative nonsense. They pour resources into diversity, equity, and inclusion consultants, stage elaborate hearings on pronouns and microaggressions, and declare national emergencies over phantoms of their own creation. It's a government of spectacle obsessed with fake disasters while completely inept at handling real ones. The obsession with the Russia hoax was the ultimate distraction, a national smokescreen to hide their utter incompetence. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. They accuse their opponents of being unserious and unfit to govern, yet their own record is one of catastrophic failure. They claim to be the party of science and reason, yet they ignore the basic engineering required to keep water flowing to farms and faucets. They claim to care about the working class, yet they allow our industrial base to wither while they chase progressive fantasies. The entire enterprise is a fraud. They are not governing. They are presiding over a managed decline, using staged crises and moral panics to divert attention from the real-world ruin they are creating. Now the truth is coming out. The carefully constructed narrative is collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions. The declassified documents, the criminal referrals, and the grand jury probes are not just partisan attacks. They are the receipts for years of lies. The architects of the Great Deception, from Obama and Clinton down to the functionaries in the intelligence agencies, are finally being exposed. The unmasking has begun, and there is nowhere left for them to hide. The institutions they claim to be defending are the very ones they are accused of perverting for their own political gain. It is a betrayal of public trust on a scale that is difficult to comprehend. Democrats in Congress and their allies in the media are already scrambling to dismiss these revelations as baseless and utter nonsense. They are falling back on their old playbook, attempting to discredit the messenger and change the subject. But this time it feels different. The evidence laid out by DNI Gabbard is specific and direct. The denials from the likes of Representative Jim Himes sound hollow and desperate, the predictable defense of a cornered establishment. They can no longer simply scream conspiracy theory when their own alleged conspiracy is being laid bare for all to see. The walls are closing in. The ultimate question, however, is not for the politicians. It is for the millions of Americans who believe them. For years, you were told that you were on the right side of history, that your political opponents were not just wrong, but evil. You were fed a steady diet of outrage and fear, convinced that you were fighting a noble battle against tyranny. You donated your money, you put up yard signs, you argued with your family, and you invested your heart and soul into their cause. You trusted them completely. And now, you are confronted with the stark possibility that it was all a lie. So what comes next for you, the Democratic voter? What do you do when you discover that the saviors you worshipped may have been the villains all along? How do you reconcile your deeply held beliefs with the emerging ugly truth? Do you double down, clinging to the comforting falsehoods and dismissing all evidence to the contrary as part of a vast right-wing conspiracy? Or do you have the courage to face the facts, to admit you were deceived, and to demand accountability from the leaders who betrayed your trust? The choice is yours. The truth is out. What will you do with it?